Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. So bear with me while I let everybody in. I hope you like the fancy little screen and me sending you messages. Did it work? I don't know. I thought I'd give it a go. Uh, it worked, yay! Um, this is so lovely, so special to have so many of you joining. And you never know with these things. But the last few are still coming in, so I'm going to try and talk and admit people at the same time. Um, things to think about that you might want tonight. I mean, most important things first. A warm drink, hot drink, cold drink, any drink you like. Something nice and comfortable, something somewhere you can
My
sit
orders
without
for
people
examining
asking you
Farpoint,
lots of
a
questions.
starbase built there by the
Um,
inhabitants of that world.
I am
Meanwhile, I am becoming better acquainted
going
with
to
my new
mute
command,
everybody because
this
there's a
galaxy-class
few
USS
noises.
Enterprise.
So give me a
I
second.
am still somewhat in awe of its
Um,
key
oh, sorry.
positions, most notably of first off.
Here we go. Here we go. Okay, and not mute myself. This is important. Otherwise, you won't hear anything I say. So if you need to change the view on your screen, um, you should have some settings. It depends what device you're on, but I think everybody's fairly familiar with Zoom these days. And there's a few little fiddly things in the corner where you can change it to gallery, speaker view. I will spotlight over my hands in a minute. Um, but yeah, drinks, pens. Obviously, I am very keen to make this as accessible as possible. So you may have gone out and got yourself a brush pen in anticipation for this. You may already have a brush pen. You may have no idea what a brush pen is. You may have just a pencil or a biro with you, and all are welcome. I am going to be teaching you some techniques to use different tools, but also primarily start thinking about how calligraphy is formed, whatever you have in front of you, because I'm a firm believer that actually just getting started and just giving it a go can give you lots of insight and lots of learnings before even getting all the equipment and knowing whether you like it or not. So we're having a go tonight. We're going to be going through some drills. We're going to be going through some words. Um, and I'll be talking more about why I've chosen days of the week in a little bit. But just to introduce myself, I'm Laura, for those of you who don't know me, or maybe you've done a workshop with me, or maybe you're on my mailing list, or maybe I know you really, really well. I know there's some familiar faces here. So it's lovely to see you all joining me tonight. I got into calligraphy 8 years ago. I'm still working out how many years ago it was, but yeah, 8 years ago, I was signed off work. I used to work in a very busy environment, running events, and um, I was given this sort of idea that actually I do a lot of work. I do then go home, I go to work, I go home, and this sort of pendulum swing. And a friend said to me, "Do you do anything for yourself? Do you do anything creative? You're quite a creative person." And I realized that that was a sort of outlet that was missing. And you'll hear these stories coming up more and more, I think, these days, where we're just trying to get back to something with our hands, perhaps a moment just to catch our breath, process, download all the things that are going on in our worlds and beyond. Um, and so I went along and did a calligraphy workshop. And one of the things it sort of gave me was this moment to just quieten the mind. I didn't really know much about it before then. I'd heard of calligraphy, and I'm sure there's some fellow sort of hand lettering lovers amongst us all tonight, people who might have tried bubble writing and all sorts of things when you're younger, and that hasn't ever sort of left you, maybe, or maybe you've played around with pens and lettering at some point. But going and doing the calligraphy led me down this path of stripping all of that back and really coming down to the technique and slowing down. ultimately. You'll hear me saying that a lot tonight. But I'm going to walk you through some of my processes, some of the things that I found really useful over the last 8 years. And it is by no means a straightforward journey. It is really about practice. It is really about finding your routine with it and finding your enjoyment. There are so many pathways into calligraphy, and some wonderful communities, societies, organizations that can support you through more um, sort of traditional education. There are lots and lots of workshops out there, and there's some incredible calligraphers amongst us tonight who have been down some of these routes. So I'm slightly nervous to have you all with me because I know that there are people here who have done a lot of it. So I'm very honoured that you've joined me tonight, because we're going right back to basics. So it's quite nice to revert to this and just explore it from a different point of view as well. So having teachers from all over the place teaching you and giving you different guidance is really, really important. I highly recommend tapping into that. I was going to say going down the Instagram rabbit hole, but it is really a wonderful space out there. So I decided at some point, maybe a couple of years into calligraphy, this is something that I'm really passionate about in terms of what it's given me. Um, Catching my breath, reducing the stress, finding a little sanctuary every evening just to practice. I say every evening. That sounds far more ambitious than I ever make it out to be, really. It comes and goes, it ebbs and flows. Thank you, Delon. Yes, please use the chat. I'm rubbish at telling people to use the chat, but please use it. I know I'm going to be talking a lot over the top of you, but anything from questions to just introducing yourselves and saying if you've ever done a bit of calligraphy before is always nice to know. You don't have to reveal it if you don't want to. Maybe the pros want to keep themselves hidden. But I now run Lauretta's Life, which is a my calligraphy business. So I teach workshops online. I teach workshops in person, in with companies, one to one, all sorts of things. And I also have a podcast where I get to interview other people, whether they're calligraphers or just in the world of letters. So it's a nice big scope, and I get to pick their brains and find out a little bit more about who they are and why they love the world of letters like I do. So we get to geek out about pens and things, which I'm hoping is a big part of why you're here, because I'm going to be introducing you to the things that I use. So material wise, it maybe you've got the worksheets. Maybe you've got them printed out, maybe they're on your screen, maybe you haven't got them at all. Please don't worry. Whatever you've got is perfect. I'm very careful with the word perfect. I take it back. Whatever you got is absolutely fine. Perfection is not welcome here. So um, I am going to just spotlight my hand and start talking you through some of the things that I've got. Maybe you've got just an everyday pencil. That's great. You might want to, I've started already on just a sort of post-it note, just blunt one end of it, or one side of it, I should say, it just to soften it. If it's super sharp, it's quite hard to get a kind of pressure change, which is what we're going to be working through. Um, Brush pens. I know there's a few of you with the brush pens that I've got because you've got them from me, probably. I talk about Pentel quite a lot. This brush sign pen is the SES15C. This is the one, if you go on their website, there's a few different brush pens, but this is the one that I love to use, whether I'm just practicing or whether I'm doing something more serious. I find that it's just got a really nice tip. It's got a very nice resistancy when you put the pressure on and off. So we'll talk through that in a minute. There are all sorts of different brush pens, and you can get bigger ones as well, that have much broader strokes in terms of the thickness of the downstroke and the upstroke, actually, when we come to do the thins. And then there's also slightly smaller brush tips as well. Of course, there are many other tools. There are pointed nib and inks. There are broad edge pens. There are all sorts of different things that you can create calligraphy with. And I'm a big advocate for drawing it in the sand, in the snow, in couscous, whatever you find that comes to mind where you can practice a little bit of the strokes and the shapes, it can be really fun. So I don't necessarily think you should stop at one thing. I started with pointed nib and ink, but sort of gently found myself gravitated towards using brush pens, partly because I create less mess. And it was becoming a challenge when I have two little children around, and there was the high risk of things getting knocked over or not dried quickly enough, or having to wash the nibs and maintain them. So brush pens became a very convenient way of practicing, but also still giving me that joy of creating calligraphy. So that's what I'm going to be using, but I will switch and show you some in pencil. So if anybody has any questions about pencils, then please let me know. Anastasia, good evening. You find mindful lettering very relaxing. Tried it about a month ago, bought several pens and pencils. I'm currently using the fountain pen, yeah, and double tip brush pens. Great. Amazing. Lovely to have you here. Yeah, and fountain pens is another one. And there's all sorts of different techniques that you can use as well with different pens. So I know I'm talking about doing thick lines and thin lines, and that's what we'll be looking at tonight. But you can also create the thicks and thins manually. And this is known as faux calligraphy, but this can also be useful for things like chalkboard signs or window displays or larger spaces where you might even take a paintbrush and begin calligraphy on a much larger scale where a pointed nib and ink or a brush pen just won't do. So lots and lots of different ways. I am going to begin by talking about the three P's. This is my kind of my own formula of remembering what I need to do to set myself up, because a big part of calligraphy is trying to unlearn what you do normally with a pen. We all know how to write the alphabet. We all know how to use a pen. We'll automatically pick it up and hold it in our hands and probably write in a variation of ways. Whether you're left-handed or right-handed, you have an automatic approach to it just through learning how to write with a pen. Handwriting is a fast and functional process. It's lovely to do and brilliant for journals and letter writing and all sorts of things that we might need to scribble notes down. I don't know if any of you still write with a pen. This is often a question that comes up. I don't do it that much. Um, it's uh, it's often something that we don't spend a huge amount doing, even just writing with a pen, but our hand will probably remember it. So what we're going to be doing tonight is trying to forget that we know how to do that. And a good way to do that is to set ourselves up in a slightly different way. So we're not just sitting down in our normal way, picking up a pen, about to write the whatever word we want to write. We're actually thinking much more mindfully, much more intentionally about how we're setting up. So I know my screen is at a jaunty angle, but hopefully this will make a little bit of sense. The first P, we have three of them. The first P is paper, and this is all about the angle. So, I mean, you can go into a lot about paper. You can talk about the thickness and the weights and how lovely some surfaces are versus others. You can work with textured ones and think about how the tip might fray on a rougher surface quicker than on a smoother surface. But for tonight, we're just going to be talking about the angle of the paper, twisting it round. So for me, as a right-hander, I'm going to be twisting it round to the left, because in the background on these guidelines, we've got some slant angles, and we're just going to be working our way through this. And to give me access to that, I want to twist my paper round. There is, I mean, there is a margin, there is a playfulness to this, which I'd love for you to be curious about. Is it that you want it completely on the side, or do you want it sort of 45 degrees, or do you want it a little bit sharper? Thinking about where that angle works best for you can also depend on how you're sitting and what other angles are going on, which I'll come on to. So paper first. trying to have it at this angle, and we'll come back to these. I'll keep refreshing your mind with this, so don't worry. Um, the next P is our pen. So important part, our paper and pen are two real kind of key elements to this. Uh, for me, it's having the pen horizontal on the page. I don't know if you can see that, but if I take my hand out the way, this is the angle that we want the pen at, coming across the page. So the tip is pointing across to the side. So left-handers, you'd probably want to switch round to the right. Yeah, Becky, thank you. I've just seen that pop up. Thank you for pointing that out. So you're finding that you need to further to the right than you normally would. Yeah, and with left-handed calligraphy, there are some beautiful left-handed calligraphers out there who really do it in lots of different ways. They might be right on the side and they might actually work down the page. Some might come from underneath and some might come from over the top. So again, all sorts of different ways that we can hold the pens and find our way with the paper. So all of this is how I would do it, and there might be little nuances or changes. So please share if you're finding other ways to do it, because that might just help somebody else as well. So for me, having the pen across, and then that allows the side of the pen to flex when I push down. So I can push down on the side of the pen, and this angle to the paper is about 45 degrees. So we don't want to be up here. We're going to ruin the end of the tip of the pen. And we're not sort of rolling over onto our hand and feeling uncomfortable. This should be a really comfortable, really natural way to hold it. So just on the side of your hand, and being able to pull the pen down with a sort of medium to firm pressure, which we'll do in a second. Um, the other tip that I tend to find useful is marrying up the side of my arm. So your arm, the wrist isn't like this or like this, unless it has to be to access the things, or perhaps that's in a comfortable way for you to hold the pen. But really, if you can have your wrist straight and the pen coming across the paper, they're almost at right angles. So hopefully that makes sense. Have a play around with that. And then, of course, we're coming on to our drills. But the final part before we get to that is your body. And I'm moving around as I say it because I'm not quite set up right. And everybody, as soon as I say the third P, posture, everyone sits upright and goes, "Oh, yes, yeah, I was hunched over or I was sat like this." So great. It's triggering something in your mind to go, "Oh, yes, well, how am I sitting? What am I doing?" Um, my tip here, and you can't see under the desk that I'm on, but is having your legs at a similar angle to the paper. So your knees aren't pointing. So my knees aren't pointing this the way with my paper this way. My knees are going like this. Does that make sense? So my knees and my paper are pointing the same way. They're sort of it stops my body from pointing one way with my arm having to pull round. So we're not in awkward positions here, hopefully. Um, just check the chat. Oh, thank you, Niranjan. Yes, Becky's got you. Hopefully that's helpful. Um, And Becky's joined a letter exchange for the spring. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, what a great way to use some calligraphy. Lovely. Judith, welcome. So we are hopefully sort of set up. We've maybe completely overthought this, or feels like we've overthought everything just to put pen to paper. But in a way, we want it to feel different. We want to know that we're setting ourselves up to start something very intentional and to begin something very slow. So if you've already completed the drills, you may have gone a little bit fast. You may not have thought through the setup. You may have just sped through because our minds tend to do that. So just have a little think about the speed at which you're working. There are little letters down the side here. and I don't normally point them out until much later, but I feel like this is useful just to mention. We've got the A for ascending X height and the baseline, which is going to be our sort of main height that we're going to be working with for most of our letters, and then the descender where all our descending lines are going to come off. So you'll see this is going to start to structure our strokes. For the first part, we're just going to practice some really simple strokes, and we are going to be applying our pressure from the ascending height down to the baseline, just like that. So the tip of your pen should flex, and if you are not using a brush pen, you can just put a medium to heavy pressure on your pencil. It won't be as thick as this, but if you want to have it as thick as this, you can always create it if you want to. If you want to leave it open, you can, or you can fill it in. But this is just beginning to practice our strokes pulling down, about 2 to 3 seconds. It's a really long time to do a very short stroke. So if it feels uncomfortable, I was going to say good, that's really mean. If it feels uncomfortable, it's great to notice that and maybe just begin to ease in. So if the first one felt uncomfortable, just try it again and see if your brain can just relax into the fact that you're doing something very slow, very intentional. You are just mark making at this point. So you might find that you've got a sort of thin, sorry, and then a thick line, or a thick and then a thin line. For these, we're just trying to get a consistent pressure all the way through. Got lots of sirens going past me. So nice and thick. And if it's not getting thick enough, try a little bit more pressure. And if it's very, very thick and you think, whoa, that's too thick, try a little less pressure. So it's all playing about, it's all being curious. So these are our down strokes. Once we've done those, we're going to go up, and we're going to go up thin. So light touch, light pressure. There will be a wobble. If there isn't, you have magic hands. Embrace the wobble is my mantra for the upstrokes. Do not fear the wobble and don't speed up because there is a wobble. Nice and slow, nice and light, just dragging it upwards. And if you've got a pencil, you'll hardly see my marks, but they're just coming up and you're going nice and slow. So a few of these, see if you can get to a sustainable thinness. I was going to say thickness. I mean, what we want to do is not try so hard that we can get this sort of hairline, but it's almost breaking and it's so hard to recreate ever again. We just want to find our flow. We're dragging it across the page. We are easing into this. If you can get it to consistently have the same thinness, that same width, weight, that's the word. That's what we're aiming for, because we want to be able to use this naturally and begin to build this up to something. If it's so difficult to achieve, it's going to become very hard to get that very thin stroke over and over again. And really what we're looking for is this contrast. So ultimately, our downstrokes are always going to be thick and our upstrokes are always going to be thin. We might even have a few slightly murky waters ones where we're coming across. If in doubt, go thin. There is actually a lot more thin than thick. So we'll come on to that in a second. And as we go through these, we're now looking at transitioning. So we've now got a thick stroke, and the little dotted line is just indicating where we're going to change into a thin stroke. So we don't drag it all the way around and then go right now around the other side. Now I need to go thin. We want to have this nice transition. And if your pen is on the side, and just check your angle, because that tends to be the bit that catches people off guard. It's dropped back into the bowl of your hand. Then you just want to come back up again, have it across the page, and then you're pushing down and releasing the pressure before you hit the bottom here. So there should be a nice light weight before you turn it, at least a transition. You can bring that even sooner. So I've transitioned, that tapering you can see has just started a little bit earlier, and that will just give a lighter weight to the calligraphy. So it'll just add this slightly more delicate weight to the whole script, but that needs to be consistent. So we haven't got one downstroke doing this and then another one doing really heavy. You can already see these two look very different. So we're looking for consistency with this, aiming for consistency. These are our warm-ups, so we're just kind of stretching. We're just beginning to familiarize ourselves with the pen, with the pencil, with the paper, with the strokes. If you haven't got the worksheets in front of you, I hope you're just sort of following along on some lined paper. If you haven't got lined paper, any paper would do. It just might not be particularly straight, and that's okay. So 5 seconds, 4 to 5 seconds to do these. Word of caution, try not to hold your breath doing this. So if you're holding your breath, it can become really quite difficult. A, to not wobble, and also B, to feel like you're able to continue the stroke in a nice, smooth way. So we're regulating our breathing here. Again, this is all adding to the sort of slow, mindful effect that calligraphy can bring you. So we've got our underturns now, and we've got our overturns. And again, just a reminder, the downstrokes are thick and our upstrokes are thin, and the same for both of those. And as we go through this, I just want you to start to see how smooth and how round these go. Not every style of calligraphy will be like this. This is one that I'd like to use. You might find some have more angular points at certain strokes, and some might be even more broken. So if you were using a nib and ink, you might want to stop and then apply the pressure in different ways. So there are different techniques with different tools, but generally we're looking for a smooth stroke. And if you're using a brush pen or a pencil, this should be all one stroke. With the ovals, these are probably the most challenging of all the strokes. For me, I find it easier to start at this 3 o'clock position. So you'll see this little starting point over here, and my arrow is going around anti-clockwise to the left, applying the pressure, releasing the pressure, and then joining back up. It is not easy. It is not as, as straightforward as I've made it sound. It comes with a huge amount of practice. So if you are getting slightly pointed versions, perhaps you've got a sort of kidney bean shape, perhaps you've got sort of more round versions. We're just working through this. Every time you make a mark on paper, we're just reflecting. Okay, so the next one I need to do is going to be slightly narrower, and the next one I need to do maybe needs a little bit more of a slant, and the next one I need to do. Okay, so being analytical or being kind and curious as you go through this, rather than heavily critical or going, oh, I can't get it. Frustration is setting in. Just notice how you're talking to yourself and notice what is being helpful and what isn't. Because I find as soon as I begin to doubt what I'm doing or get frustrated, and start to shut myself down from kind of progressing, it becomes really hard to continue it and enjoy it. So find a little bit of curiosity in this. We're just learning these strokes. We're just beginning to sort of piece these together. So finding your flow with it. every single one is going to be different. We want them to look the same and we're aiming for consistency, but ultimately, every time you put pen to paper, it is by hand, it is handcrafted, you're breathing differently. Every time you practice calligraphy, there is a uniqueness to that moment when you are doing it, when you're putting it on the paper. There will not be another moment like that. There will not be the same rhythm of your breath, your heartbeat, your hand movement, how your blood is pumping around your body. And that is what's so beautiful about anything by hand, but particularly making marks on paper, where I think there is this sort of mind, body, paper output connection, and we're in dialogue with each other. So that's my little TED talk over. That's your ovals. Then we've got these J's and P shapes. So this is really to get used to the petal shape that I want to introduce. And again, something that I will use quite a bit throughout this style. And the petal shape is this bit in the middle. Everybody learns slightly differently, so I like to point out the sort of negative space around the lines as well. Sometimes people are very focused on the lines, but actually it's not until they see that there is this shape in here that it becomes a structure that they can work to, or becomes something that they can kind of digest through their mind into their hands. So pressure on, releasing the pressure and twisting over. You might find that you're getting much rounder, maybe doing something like this. So it's just curling a little bit too soon. So we just want to bring that back round and probably even make that turn a little shallower. And we get into this, and I know I've mentioned it in all the kind of signing up to this. With the 4-week course that I'm doing is in much more detail. We go through every little stroke and little nuance like this, where you can really begin to understand why we're doing it there, why we're doing it this way, and how to get the best of those techniques. So this is what we're looking for, this sort of petal shape as we do these drills. The last two, and then we will get into some words and connecting some of these strokes. This is our double turn or compound curve. So we're turning, we've got an overturn and then an underturn. Key to this is, well, I was going to say key, there are many keys to this. Obviously, this first bit is that the distance for the thick, that heavier weight, is coming through the middle on the slant, but it's also a very short distance. So as you apply the pressure, if you're going too fast, that pressure will continue as you go around the line. So really slow with this. Upstroke, over the top, pressure down, release the pressure, and coming back up. The second thing to note is just finding your distance with it. So we want this to match this. Oh, there's so much I could talk about these. This is really getting into it, but this is something that I see quite a lot of. We've got different points, different angles, different slants. So if you can see, some people may be doing something a bit more like this. We've got not the same shapes going on, not the same slants, everything's sort of working against each other. So we want to come back to the overturn, coming back down on the slant and bringing that back together. It's as though you've got this and this, and they've just got married and they're together forever, and they've connected in this little middle section. And the same with our final drill. So this is our double turn starting with the downstroke. So the heavier stroke and then our lighter one, and then finishing on a heavier stroke. Again, the slower you can go, the more control over the pressure, the more you can think about the shapes, the strokes, the distance. How's that feeling for everyone? Are you deep in it? Have you found your flow? Have you caught your, I hope you're all breathing still. I can't see all of you because my giant hand is in front of me, but I hope it's making sense. So those are our drills. We have warmed up our hands, hopefully. We've kind of got an idea about some shapes and some strokes that we want to use. We've maybe got used to the pen. If we've got a pen in front of us, maybe we're finding our thicks and thins with our pencils. So with all of those strokes, you can apply pressure with a pen, sorry, a pencil. Um, it's going to be more subtle, more fine, but you can do it. And obviously depending on the size of your pencil and how blunt it is on one side, you'll get a different thickness. So it can really vary. And obviously, the more you use it, the more it will vary as well. So you might find you've gone through a few of the drills and it's starting to look thicker or heavier. You might find as well with your pen, if you've got one that has this ridge, there is, oh, Delon, thank you. That's very nice. 8 years. I'm just going to keep saying it. 8 years. So if you're new to this, don't worry. Um, there is a little ridge about an inch or so up on these Pentel brush pens. This is a really good place to hold it, I find. If you're holding really close to the nib, one thing that you might find happen is that it doesn't give you a huge amount of distance when you're creating your stroke. So you're having to lift the pen, which we don't want when we're creating our full stroke. So just coming up a little bit. Again, it's a really natural way to hold the pen quite close and it gives you that control. But actually, for calligraphy, you just want to take the control off a little bit. There's something lovely about calligraphy that allows you to play within the structures and the formats and the sort of foundations of all of these strokes and all of these techniques where you can just relax into it. There should be a firm grip, but it's not tight. It's not super, super tight. We want to be able to move. We want our hand to feel like it can glide across the page. Which brings me on to the elbow. I was wondering where to start there. The elbow versus the palm of the hand. I've found over the years, the more and more I pay attention to the pressure where that's sitting, the more helpful it can be. So if you've got the pressure quite heavy into your hand, it's really hard to kind of relax and your hand starts to grip tighter and it's very hard to slide your hand across the page as and when you need to. If the pressure is sort of anchored into the elbow, so ideally on the table, you have got the pressure and the control kind of coming through from your shoulder, not so much that you're sort of tightening the shoulder, but just so that it's a pivot point for your hand and you can take the pressure off coming through here and starting to tighten the hand. So use this as your moment to do a little bit of hand yoga. Anything else? I find myself sort of sprawled on the table for my elbows. I wasn't sure it was correct or not, but it worked. Great. Yes. And I don't know if you can see me, maybe some of you can, but um the the sort of the wider the stance, the better in some ways, because you are opening up your body to stabilize yourself rather than having your elbow or shoulder really tight in can just restrict all of those movements and it begins to become quite difficult. Easier to have more pace by ensuring my posture is ready before starting. I mean, you're saying all the right things. This is great. This means that words are starting to make sense. It's registering, but it is through doing and finding your rhythm with it and finding how it feels that you can begin to notice, ah, okay, that makes sense. This is Laura's talking some sense here. So we're going to have a look at days of the week. And the reason for this, and the reason that I picked this for this session is because we can get really swept up in the fact that calligraphy as an art form feels like you have to deliver something hugely artistic. And oh, certainly for me, I felt the pressure of, right, I'm learning something to create something. I'm learning something to do something and give it to someone. And I think that absolutely has its place, and it's something wonderful that you can do. But to get us started and to just enjoy the process and have a go at it, days of the week is a lovely way to build in a little daily practice. So rather than sitting there going, right, okay, maybe there's a favorite lyrics of a song or a poem, or actually somebody wants me to write this or that, or it can feel quite big and highly pressured. And what we want to do is remove that pressure and just play and just see what happens. And I spent a lot of my time, once I started learning calligraphy, meetings and starting my to-do lists and little things like that. I just find little pockets where I could just have a go at doing a letter here and a letter there and a word here and a word there. So days of the week takes away the decision of, right, what am I going to do? Um, or filling a page or not knowing what to write. And it can be something as simple as just writing the day. So for any bullet journalers out there, this will be really helpful because it might be something nice that you can write, but you could also do the months or the seasons. And I find those little anchor points where you're not having to think about, oh, I need a really important quote or a phrase that really means something. Let's just start by doing some days of the week. So this is where I like to sort of break it down into this low pressure practice. Um, and you're also going to be repeating the word day, which includes, as you can see here for Monday, an oval, which we've just done. We've got an ascending loop, which comes all the way up. We've got another oval. We've got an underturn, and a descending loop. And these are just several of the drills that we've been practicing, but it's a repetition of that. So we get to practice this consistency, this work towards the ovals in particular, but you'll start to see there's a little bit of a rhythm to this. So let's get into the kind of code breaking. Why is everything separated? Why are there numbers and arrows all over the place? And then why have we got it together underneath? I like to explain things in separate strokes. I think it's really useful to see it broken down into individual strokes first, because that is how we are going to be constructing it when we write the word Monday. I use the word write very carefully because we're not handwriting. We will be lifting. That is why there are all these lovely little cherries dotted all over the word Monday. So when we come to it, we're going to be lifting at every point there. Um, so we've got the numbers because I always find that people question where they're starting, which stroke first. But as we go through this, you'll see the first stroke is coming up. Then we've got our second stroke coming just down to the X height, the third stroke, and you can work your way through this at your own pace. But if you want to follow along with me, then please do. Um, I know the ovals are really challenging. So if you're struggling with those, please don't worry. They will become easier in time. And there is almost a little light bulb moment for most of us where you're like, oh, I've kind of got it. My hand's listening to my head and my pen is listening to my hand and it's all working. But it does take a little bit of practice to get this going and some of the muscle memory and reminding ourselves to breathe and all of this. So working through the slight discomfort of trying to get something right can take a bit of time. And the kinder you can be to yourself, the better. So not all of these strokes are what we've just done in the drills, and some of them look like, well, why don't I just go up here? For this, we're going to be attaching an oval, and the side of the oval hits here. So if that carried on, it would come up here and we'd sort of see it. Or there's a chance that you would, or you're going to have to pull it closer in. So it changes the kind of space around these strokes. So we're just trying to build in a little bit of technique practice where we can start to think about why we are doing these things. So following these rhythms, following these strokes, this is going to make up our letter forms and the word Monday. You'll notice as well, um, I've completely ignored the letter forms, partly because we only have so much time and I want to make sure we get through as much as possible, but also there is a benefit to kind of going through each individual letter. But there is also a lot to be gained from just understanding that everything is stroke based anyway. Ultimately, we are not learning the letter M necessarily on its own. We are learning to put together the series of strokes that we've just done now a little bit closer together. So they're touching, but we are still lifting individually. So they're like little Lego blocks or Um, what's my other analogies? Ingredients, you're just putting in one by one, stroke by stroke. So hopefully, and I know I keep repeating myself, but hopefully you are not writing the word Monday. You are very carefully, slowly, intentionally attaching a series of strokes together to form the word Monday, which looks like it's been written all the way through, but we have carefully crafted it with thick and thin strokes in a combination of strokes and shapes on the paper. Um, so a big sort of learning point in my journey with calligraphy, and from what I've seen from other beginners, is that this tends to be the quickest sort of shortcut in our minds. We're like, oh, well, we're doing the letter A and there's this bit, and then there's a line that kind of comes down the side and then that goes up. Or we go, yeah, I know what we're doing. We're doing a letter A. So suddenly this and this, yes, they look like the letter A, but they're not carefully crafted with an oval and an underturn next to it. So they are not always going to look the same. And we've also lost this negative space around it, and we've reduced the space within it as well. Um, I think some of the biggest errors as well is where we're not kind of carrying on with the exit stroke. So we talk a lot about this in the 4-week course. We go through all of these in great detail and we find out what's going on and why isn't it working. And then we can begin to build off of that. So Monday, perhaps you want to have a go at doing that on your own underneath, or you can save that and come back to it. Keep these sheets. You've also got these to print off whenever you want to. So you could go to town and learn the days of the week over and over and over. Tuesday, we've got, I was going to say a new stroke. I mean, there are several new strokes in the Monday, but the this sort of S curve that sits across the top, you'll see this start to reappear, and hopefully you'll start to see a lot of these strokes repeating themselves over and over in different words, in different letter forms. So as we come through, oh, look, there's another underturn. There's another underturn. The E is part of our sort of oval family. That's got this back that bends. So this stroke before doesn't go all the way up because it's going to hit the back of this. The S is a really tricky one. There is a bit of a pressure variation. Um, and another word of caution, not quite the right word, but point to make is that all of these will have variations to them. You could do a D, an S, um, all sorts of letters in lots of different ways. So for the S, for example, you can come up. So the one I've just done sits just over this entrance stroke, but you might do one with a lighter stroke. You might do one with a double turn that comes back with a heavier stroke. You might just want to take back off and exit from the bottom here. And if you were going more modern, you might even bounce it slightly outside the guidelines and bring it through. It changes the look of the letters, and so the style shifts when we look at it, and the aesthetic changes. There is a lot of different styles out there, and people often play with different flourishes and different ways to craft the letters and the strokes. But what we're trying to look for is this consistency with the style. So there is a signature way of doing these. And for me, I really like these loops, these petals. These are coming down. There's also the oval shapes. So this, you can see there's ovals. Even if we can't see them, they're sort of there. They're just, you'll go to bed tonight just seeing ovals. Um, Even with the underturns and the overturns, even here you can see that there's a slightly bigger version of that. And this comes through in lots of different ways. Maybe don't do this because it doesn't look like the word Tuesday, but hopefully that's giving you the idea of where I'm going with this. So there's a rhythm to it, even with the underturns that aren't, they're not all ovals, but the art of the oval is sort of sat in there. Sorry, Becky. Laura, what are the hardest two strokes letters to join or particularly challenging words to do in calligraphy in your experience? Oh, now you're asking. So I have a real, I think any calligrapher or anybody, I mean, anybody who plays with letters will have an affinity to certain letters and a challenging relationship with others. For me, I really struggle with the X. So, an X, so for the word exit, for example, you might do it like this. It's taken me a while to find the X that I enjoy. It's it's an awkward one because partly because it's kind of going against the grain, but it's got these harsh connections. So they not only is it sort of not on the slant, really, in either direction, in its sort of integral letter, but it's you've got to find your way around it. So it's got a slightly sort of sharper version at the top that this turn, and then you've got a softer one, but you don't want it too soft because it starts to open it much wider. So it does take a little bit of playing around. Um, I think any double letters, unfortunately, and it is a shame, the word happy has two P's in it, and it's possibly one of the things that me and my students are always talking about the fact that doing two letters together, but particularly two P's, is really quite challenging. Um, and I find there's a couple of ways to get around this, which seem fairly obvious when I say it, but it's either getting them to look completely different, as in intentionally different, or as identical as possible, which seems like a really obvious thing to say, but actually sometimes making them slightly different can work in your favor, and can really bring something slightly fun and playful, or bring in a little bit of a flourish and change the design of the letters. So it's really hard to talk and do this. Wednesday is a very long word, isn't it? Um, I'm hoping it's spelt right, but when you split it all up, and you'll find this, now you're in the world of calligraphy, it's very easy to misspell everything. Judith probably doesn't have this issue because she's well versed in
Oh, yes.
it's a real tricky one to get right. So practice definitely getting your rhythm and working it out and doing it in pencil and then doing it several more times. And then, we're just doing this once. We're just dipping our toes in here. And look, for the W is a prime example here of, okay, this is quite a sort of soft version of the W, but you could take it to a much more traditional way where you've got these sort of pressure variations coming through. Um, and it's much more delicate, but that sat with something that has a little bit of a bounce and a flourish doesn't always feel comfortable. So if you're going to take it into something a little bit more traditional, where you've got these sort of entrance strokes that are playing around, and dabbling in the sort of more copper plate, slightly more historical scripts, then you probably want to continue with that. So you will, if you looked up a W in calligraphy online, you'll find lots of different variations. So it's, if you're going to attach different strokes and different letters together, unless you're purposefully doing lots of different styles and scripts, you want to just find the ones that are sort of echoing these little signature like motifs as they go through. So we've got these little pockets where it's just talking back to each other. We've got a little turn here and another turn here. So Wednesday comes together with a lot of loops. Again, a lot of ovals. I'm really sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have done days of the week. We've really gone in the deep end here. But I wanted to show you Thursday because, not because it is Thursday, but that is a wonderful synergy. But also because we've got the start of how we might connect two letters together that would otherwise sort of slightly clash. Let me just catch up on this on the chat. Hang on. The letter Y is my least favorite, Annie. Yes, I struggle to get the turny bit underneath consistent. Yeah. Is this, yeah, I'm going to do it so that I can visualize what you're saying. Is it this bit as you come round? I mean, you don't have to turn it over either. You could come back up. And it depends how sharp the turn is to how large the loop is. You can weave it back through, but we're sort of coming back to that slant. The word Wednesday is pronounced differently than it is spelled. Yes, Dylan, you're right. I know. Don't get me started on the English language. We'll be here too long. Two syllables, what looks like it's three. Yes, I know. Wednesday. We've got a lot going on there and a lot to write. Maureen, I love copperplate writing. I had a primary six teacher who made us write in copperplate with the old style pen and ink. Oh, wow. Well, I found it hard at school because we weren't allowed to have ink and block paper. I think it's very beautiful. It is very beautiful. I mean, hugely, again, a massive influence on what I like and what styles of calligraphy I like to play with as well. Is finding those ones that look beautiful but also are quite enjoyable to craft. I think there's endless scripts that you could learn, and it's definitely worth trying all of them. This is our connection with the T and the H. So separated, I know it's out of context here, but you can start to see the strokes building up. These are how they're going to sit on the page, and this is, well, not how they're going to sit on the page. This is how we're going to create each stroke individually. Is this making sense? I hope it's making sense. So downstroke, we're lifting, and then That doesn't have to touch the top of the T. It can do though. If it touches, fine. And then we're overturn and coming back up to the next underturn, underturn, and working our way through.
Hur går det för
So without this,
det är en halvtimme kvar?
oh, I don't know if that's somebody asking. Anybody asking a question? If we're not doing this, what tends to happen is we have this sort of the T that comes through here, and then we've got an H, which sort of wants to go somewhere here. You might have to skip out the ascending loop, or you might find that doing this works, but I find it doesn't. You might want to try it and see. But there's obviously lots of other ways that you can do it as well. And again, the variations become really fun to play around with. Again, bringing a bit more sort of tapering through. You could bring a loop in that comes up. You could leave that slightly open and not worry about the next bit. Sorry, not worry about the loop at the top here. It makes sense in my mind. So this is where we're going with our letters for this style. And this little gap here, and this little gap here, and this little gap here can only happen if we're attaching it in a very gentle way. So we're not getting really, really close. So for the D, for example, we're coming out from the side and just gently, if anything, a little bit further away, almost not touching. But what happens if we go too close is we end up inside the oval, and this can just shut down that oval a little bit, like I was saying with the A, and we start to lose that lovely negative space on the inside. So we don't want to change that. We want to keep the openness there as much as possible. So everything is just very gently sort of touching the side of our strokes, and they're just sort of carefully being plotted next to each other. You can, of course, have styles that might come up a little bit higher. You might find there's some that come down a little bit lower. You might find that you've seen ends that bounce. There are, again, endless ways to sort of craft and create these, but you'll see nearly all of these with these thicks and thins are in the same places, as in your downstrokes are always thick and your upstrokes are always thin. And the thickness is less than our thin. So there is more thin than thick. I think I said that earlier, but just to reiterate. Right, how are we doing? Saturday. No, Friday. Nearly there, nearly there. Making our way through the week. It's really like experiencing a week. So Friday, much like Thursday, we've got our little sort of S curve coming through here, but we might want to attach another one just to bring it across. And that's going to attach to our R and then the I. So I'm switching between the broken steps and the connected words, connected strokes. I talked a little bit about rhythm earlier, and this is sort of what I mean. It's like music on a page. There is a flow to it, and I hope even in this sort of short time, you've slowed down, you've caught your breath, you've reset yourself several times. Maybe you're just exploring what the pen's doing, what the strokes are doing. But as you go through this and as you piece these strokes together, you're starting to see, oh yeah, that's coming under, that's coming under, that's coming under, or over or round. And there's gentle turns. So we haven't got Friday looking like this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then I'm purposefully trying to do sort of different angles. Suddenly you've got a very wide bit here, that's very wide, that's very sharp. This is now off the slant, this is too much on the slant, this is dragged through a little bit. I'm sort of being analytical and just going, oh yeah, that's not right. And what's going on here? I've sort of just given up and stopped. So exploring this without being really unfair to yourself, knowing that you're trying something new, knowing that you're seeing how it sits on the page. I mean, goodness, my first calligraphy, I look back now and I think, wow, who was that? It's worlds apart when you've kind of got some of these practiced, and I'm still learning. Honestly, I cannot tell you, it is just endless the ways you can create it. People that I'm teaching are teaching me different ways to hold the pen, different ways to unlock things for different people. Everybody's breathing differently, everybody has different challenges, and making it accessible and making it something that people can enjoy and explore is really, really important to me. I think it is absolutely something that people can use as a respite for their week, in their day. Just something that can bring you a little bit of calm and peace. And I hope, between all the slight frustrations and stressfulness of trying to get it right on the page, you are also finding a little bit of joy and playfulness in here. We're on guidelines, so I just wanted to mention that if you haven't got the guidelines, maybe you're working on plain paper, or maybe you're thinking, yeah, this is all very well, but if I want to do a birthday card, I'm not necessarily going to have the guidelines there. We talk through layouts in the course, but we also there are also lots and lots of different resources to and tools to kind of marking up a sheet as well. So there's all sorts of brilliant little things that you can start to build up if you wanted to get into the kind of kit and work out, actually, I want to do a full piece. But you can also just use a ruler. Yes, it's going to take a little bit longer, but you can mark things up in a way that is going to give you that structure. If you are creating for something that you just want to get a bit of joy out of, I mean, these days I tend to do birthday cards off grid, maybe with a pencil, and I tend to do it by eye, which has taken time. But to be able to give someone something that I've put their name, a word, a phrase, or something on a card and give it to them, I think it's really nice to be able to do that without having, spent 3 weeks trying to mark it up and recreate it and do it and do it and do it, to the point where it's actually not sustainable to do that for everybody's birthday card. So finding your way with this is really important. It might be that there are more structured processes that you want to bring in, and for bigger, more important pieces, then you want to spend a bit more time with them. Saturday and Sunday, just a word on the S's. We talked a little bit about the lowercase s's. This is an S that I would use as a sort of standard S, as in it's quite a nice S to do. It's got a slightly larger turn at the top and a slightly smaller turn at the bottom. One of my favorite essays to do, and I say that I've kind of fairly recently discovered it. I think it was beginning of last year, is much more complicated. So I don't tend to teach it immediately, but it comes with a bit of a flourish. And it takes a few goes to get right. But I really like how it sits on the page. And this is very much a kind of capital S, which kind of I mean, again, we talk about this in the course, but it's that anchoring of a capital letter versus the rest of the word. So things to find here. So I've gone a little bit heavier on this one, lighter on this one, sort of medium on that one. But we're looking for this equidistance bit here. We want to try and get across this line without it feeling uncomfortable. So it's not too shallow. So we're sort of sweeping in. I don't know if you can see, but there's a sort of oval here. There's an oval here. So again, just coming back to those turns and those sort of shapes sitting within the lines and the letter forms themselves. We all start somewhere. I'm still learning after 8 years. Pretty soothing to watch. Absolutely. It is just a journey. It is, and you can take from this whatever you want. The idea that it could just bring you a little bit of calm, do it for yourself, or you can build up to sort of feeling confident enough to do a name or somebody else's initials even. I really think taking it as fast or as slow as you like, but really not trying to put too much pressure on what you should be achieving. It's how much you feel comfortable doing and making sure that you can find that practice and enjoyment from it. Kate, I tend to do formal calligraphy scripts like italic. Are there similar rules that you should follow with modern or brush pen lettering? Yeah, so I think there are two schools of thought here. There is very much the sort of formal calligraphy with very strict structures and really you're not going outside of the realms of every single stroke being very formulaic, and it needs to have a particular weight to it. But of course, with italic, I presume you're using a nib and ink or a broad edge pen, so there might be angles brought in as well. So you've got slightly different techniques that you're using. With the modern and brush pen lettering, I mean, this sort of falls somewhere between the two, which is why I quite like it, because we've got a little bit of formal strokes coming through. It is very modular, but to take it outside of that, you can really play with kind of how modern you want to create this. Do you want to bounce it around? Do you want to sit within the guidelines? Do you want to allow it to be a little bit bouncier? And therefore, it's not following that kind of regular technique that we were just talking about. You can also bring through a kind of extended approach to it. So the S might stay the same, but you might, and I tend to go a little bit shallower here because it exaggerates. Sorry, talking and calligraphying. How it exaggerates those lines in between. So we've sort of got a little bit of a rhythm coming through where there's much more stretch. And therefore you're sort of you're stepping outside of the rules of that traditional regularity of the script, and the sort of the formal precision, that's what I'm trying to say, of scripts where you are really quite tight within the angles and the technique that you're using. This suddenly becomes really playful, much lighter, and potentially more accessible, but actually it still takes practice because you've really got to think through the weights and where things are sitting and how comfortable it feels on the page. And again, that can be by eye. Um, but the rules tend to be less rigid. You know, you're not saying, well, the N has to do that or the D has to do that. So for a lot of the more formal scripts, and like you say, like italic, there is a way, and that is how you create it. There might be variations within that or within the umbrella of kind of black letters. But there would be, I guess just taking it with artistic license, the flourishes and maybe some of the thinner strokes or elements that you might add into designing are really the only things that step outside of that. But you tell me, Kate, you do the italic, you tell me. That's just my thoughts on it. Um, and for anybody here who does calligraphy in particular scripts, let me know if what you think as well to that. I've added a reference page because I thought, well, it's all very well doing days of the week, but you might be like, well, I kind of wanted to, write my own word, Laura, actually. So I thought I'd just give you, just include a kind of quick view brush script letter to refer to. And this, again, a couple of variations on the M's, the N's that we talked about. O's, there weren't many O's. I mean, there were ovals, but there weren't many O's within the days of the week. So there'll be letters in here that you haven't seen before or you haven't done before. So hopefully these just allow you to explore those if you wanted to. I've thrown in some numbers at the end because why not? You never know, you might want to write the date or do something. Um, but yeah, this is something you can create these with a pencil. Have I mentioned that? You could create these with a pencil, you could create these with a bullet tip pen, you can recreate the thicks and thins, you can do it with the nib and ink. You're following the same structure of the letter. And what we're looking for is the sort of holding on to the integrity of the letter. So it looks like an M or it looks like a P. And so when you start to begin to put those individual strokes together, you have still got what spells, hopefully, the word that you're trying to get to. So we haven't taken it so far that we're sort of flourishing all over the place and we've lost sight of what the letter should look like. That can kind of come later, but not to lose sight of it, but to add some flourishes in. But those are the days of the week, and I hope that's been useful, interesting. I feel like I've just talked at you for a very, very long time. So I was thinking, oh, there's probably going to be lots of quiet spells and silences. I wonder if everyone's going to be okay with that. No, I've filled them. So there's a little bit of time before we end where obviously if you've got questions, you can either drop them in the chat or if somebody wants to ask a question, you can come off mute. I don't know how many people we've got, 44 of you. It might be a lot of questions all at once, or pop them in the chat and I can sort of work my way through them. One thing I did want to mention was that for anybody who is interested in taking this further or exploring a course or finding out a little bit more about the brush pen calligraphy course with me, then I will pop the link in there in a moment in the chat and you can have a little uh, exploration of what the course looks like. But yes, Delon, we go through the uppercase, the lowercase letters. We get much more into the sort of techniques and the analytics of it all, but also the groupings of the letters, and also starting to build up those connections and the understanding of how things connect and which letters should be connecting in what way. And then we move through into sort of bigger words, bigger phrases, layouts, and flourishing towards the end of the course. So that packs a lot into a 4-week course, but they are 2-hour sessions. So tonight's been just sort of about an hour and a half. And for anybody new here, well done, because it will probably feel quite exhausting. There's a lot of information to go in. But I just, yeah, I think it's just taking that first step of, oh, is this interesting for me? Is this something that could give me something? Oh, lots of lovely hearts. Thank you. Is this something that I can play with as a creative outlet, or as something creative that you want to pursue as a skill, in much more depth? So the brush pen course is very much about exploring this in much more detail. And if you do sign up, then obviously I've mentioned that Pentel, who do this pen that I use, they've got like an exclusive discount that will go out to you. What else is there to say? I think you're all on my mailing list now as well. So if the course is not for you, that's absolutely fine. There is lots to be gained from lots of lovely resources, and it's not just me. Calligraphers all over the world have incredible videos, YouTube videos, worksheets. There's a calming calligraphy workbook on my website. There's all sorts of things that you could just keep that going, and that's really my hope, and that my intention for tonight is to make you go, I just want to have another go at that, or I just want to keep going with this, or well, now I've got the brush pen and now I've learnt a couple of things, maybe I'll keep going. Why is the crossbar of the T so high? Yeah, it doesn't have to be, it can be much lower. You can, on this one, do you mean, or in this one? The lowercase. Yeah, you'd bring it down, would you? I think as well, you can also drop this even lower as well. So you don't have to start at the top here. You might want to come down, but you can also do straighter ones. But I would do that. Don't forget as well, the grids, the guidelines that I've got, we've got the ratio is 1:1:1. So again, different calligraphers might teach different slant angles as well. This is a degree of 60. Most commonly it's sort of 55 to 52. I quite like it up to 60. It just gives a little bit of a more comfortable angle for me, but it doesn't mean that you can't then adjust it between those. And also your X height and ascenders and descenders, those can vary quite a lot on different guidelines as well. That's been very interesting. Good. Thank you. Oh, this is lovely. Thank you so much. Um, oh, you've missed the link. Okay, let me get hang on. I'll get the worksheet link and I'll get the course link as well. Because they will be in the emails. But worksheets. Okay, worksheets are here. This is where I need a handy helper. Those are the worksheets, and then and I will get the replay out to everybody tomorrow. So if you've gone, oh yeah, but I just missed what you said about this, or actually I've got some more questions on the email. Oh, Moira's already on it. Thank you, Moira. Maureen, am I correct in thinking that you will send out recordings? Yes, sorry, I'm answering your questions before I'm reading them. I'm a carer for family research with some nights not available. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Oh, May, lovely to see you. Holding the pen made a massive difference to me. You're very, very welcome. Lots of useful tips. Thank you. Thank you. Kate, thank you. It's been lovely listening to you chat all the way through. Good. I know it's hard work talking and writing. Incredible. Thank you, Kit. Thank you, Louise. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Contributions? I can unspotlight my camera maybe so you can we go. Oh, I can see you all. Look at you all. How lovely. Um, oh, this is lovely. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, but any questions as well? Don't forget if you suddenly think of a question, you think, oh, I didn't really ask that on the call, but actually I do want to ask the question. Please email me because I find it really useful knowing what questions that you have. I find it very helpful to be able to answer them rather than worry that you've all gone off and gone, that didn't make any sense. I'm not sure what she was talking about. But yeah, just connect with me. I'm on Instagram at Laura Letters Life. I am more than happy to chat with you on there or just reply to any of the emails actually. You can always ask a question about what type of pen, what this, what that. My favorite ruler and paperweight and pen brand, all sorts of things. Oh, thank you, Piro. Annie Rastogi, thank you. How long is the course and what is the duration and how many times a week is it going to be? Excellent question. It is 4-week course. It's 2 hours every Thursday. And it's once a week. Yeah, so it starts on the 30th of April. And yeah, we go through a sort of 4-week process of each week you'll get sent a workbook and you can work through it and it's all online and you get all the replays and we have a little community where we can all talk and share progress and hold space for each other because I think it's really important that whatever you're doing and whatever you're learning is shared and it just makes such a difference when you're doing it with other people. I think that was one of the things I struggled with at the beginning. I was just sort of trying to work it out on my own. And it wasn't until I started connecting with others and learning with other people that I was like, oh, you do it like that. Ah, yeah, okay, that makes more sense. So yeah, it's nice being able to connect with other people. Um Oh, Jamie, you did do my 4-week course. Oh, lovely to see you again. Barbara, thank you. Oh, good, absorbing. I like that word. Um, oh, lovely. Thank you, everybody, and Moira. Yeah, I think there's a lot more to say about the letters, but we can explore those another time. And yeah, just hugely grateful to you all for joining me tonight. Please stay in touch and let me know how you get on with your own practice. And some of you I can see Michelle, various people. I will see you again, Anastasia, various people that are lovely regulars that I do see often. Oh, there's a whole nother page. Look, wow. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to see you all tonight, and I hope you get to just relax and sleep really well because that's a lot of information to absorb. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you all very soon. I'll let you go and have a lovely evening and drink your teas. Mine's gone cold, so I'll stop talking and drink it, and hopefully yours hasn't. See you all very soon. Bye, everyone. Hi, Pippa. Sorry, I just seen you. Hiya.